This is the story about making a book, the Mercy Project INOCHI. But it's more than just a story about making a book. It's about turning something bad and tragic and making something good. A couple of years ago, my only sister was diagnosed with incurable cancer. She was the last of my nuclear family, so, as you might imagine, this news struck like lightning, and I found myself on the way to California, back from where I live in Tokyo, Japan. And then something truly remarkable happened. We were introduced to hospice care and the merciful, humane care she received there took away her pain and gave her quality time in the last 5 months of her life to spend with us, her family. And we all gathered around and solidified and actually, strangely, came away with happy memories. That's when I began to think of what could I do to show my gratitude and appreciation to the people at hospice. And I came up with an idea that I would ask my photographer friends who I've met all over the world to share with me one photograph that says to them, Mercy, they teach me, and we put together either an auction, a show, or a book to give tribute to and generate funds for hospice care. But I think I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. Maybe a little bit of background might be helpful. Gina and I were survivors. Both of our parents died young through illness, and we had this sort of fantasy that that sort of thing would skip a generation. I was raised by one paternal aunt and my uncle, and my sister was raised by another paternal aunt. So we spent the better part of 11 years separated, but I was raised as the son of my aunt and uncle and given the greatest gift of all, of a happy childhood. Jean and I would not be reunited in a meaningful way until we were both adults. After this reunion, we floated along in this fantasy that we were survivors and that we would grow old together and share great stories of how tragedy had skipped a generation, but life is not always that way. So there I was with this great idea. So what do I do first? Do I collect the photographs or do I find someone interested? So the first thing I did was I went to a local museum and proposed an auction, and that didn't go anywhere. Next, I looked for funding, foundation grant, and that didn't go very far either. So finally it was a Friday evening, and I said, I've got to make a move on this, and I took a chance and I sent out about 40 emails to photographers I knew and laid it out and said, please send me one low-res file of a photograph that means mercy to you. And then, again, something amazing happened. Out of the 40 emails I sent out, 35 or so came back with images attached. And I realized then that this was something that could be amazing. The photos kept coming in, and before 2 or 3 weeks had passed, There were well over 100 photographs. So what was next was to find a designer to make a book mock-up. There is no one in the world I would rather collaborate with on a book than Giorgio Baravale of Demo Design. He lives in the Hudson River Valley of New York. And what I did next was, on my next trip back to the U.S., I rented a car and drove up to Giorgio's beautiful studio in the hills of the Hudson Valley, and he warmed up to the project right away. What I love most about working with Giorgio is I just simply say, Giorgio, here is the material, and do what you want to do, because every time it comes back, there's something new, amazing. He pulls things out of the work that I didn't even see. And what I received this time was nothing short of a jaw-dropping design. Finding a publisher, to say the least, can be a challenge. My first two books I published in Italy, mainly because I like the old school publishing world in the sense that they take a chance with a project they believe in. This time was a similar process, but it happened in Japan. A good friend of mine who I work with, photo editor Yumi Goto, thought she knew someone who would be interested in the Mercy Project. She introduced me to Mr. Shunichi Nishiyama, and Nishiyama-san is old school in the best sort of way. He's one of these connoisseurs of photography, and he had a look at the project and had never collaborated, to my knowledge, with someone from outside Japan, non-Japanese, and he looked at it as a unique opportunity. We had an Italian designer, an American photographer with this project, and then the Japanese sensibility for producing books. One of the first lessons I learned moving to Japan is that languages, certainly as different as English and Japanese, rarely translate directly. And in the case of this book's title, The Mercy Project, was another case, because in the Japanese context, it just didn't feel right to Nishiyama-san. So we settled upon the Japanese name Inochi, which means life. And it had a more positive connotation in this country, and so we decided to go with the Mercy Project INOCHI. After a couple of months of going back and forth between Giorgio in New York and Nishiyama-san in Tokyo, we were ready to take it to the printer, and Nishiyama-san had a long relationship with a printer in Niigata Prefecture on the other side of the island of Honshu from Tokyo. On the day we arrived at Hakushindo, the printer, I could tell that they were nervous because they hadn't worked with a gaijin or a foreigner before. Nishiyama-san, though, cleared the way for me, and soon we became almost like family to them. It was a 2-day process, and the entire printing company kind of adopted us, and in the end they produced a little brochure of our time in Niigata. And that brings us back to the purpose of this book, which is to raise funds and awareness for hospice, because it is so important in aging societies like Japan, the United States, Western Europe, and even in China. In my opinion, it is the most humane care for end of life, and I hope that one day we will wonder why we didn't always care for people this way. All profits from this book are divided between San Diego Hospice and the Institute for Palliative Medicine and Japan Hospice Palliative Care Foundation. I can think of no better way to give back just a little bit of what was given to my family and me. And I'd like to thank all the photographers for their generosity in offering their work. It is a wonderful collection of photography and stands on its own. The Mercy Project INOCHI is available on www.amazon.co.jp. That's Amazon Books Japan. Adamu menipiga
mimi na mpenzi wangu mpaka kufa. Nyinyi wazazi mumenichukia bure, huyu mke ni mke wangu, hata mumenipiga, hata mumenitukana, huyu mke